Well, it was a somewhat unexpected thing, but honestly, probably not that terrible. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Mix and Mash Battle Lounge hunt with the 2MK team. Today's going to take a little more coordination because it is that time of year where we look around for people to join in with. But unfortunately, we've been finding that less and less when we log in lately do we actually have a full lounge to enter or use. So that was part of why we've been creating our own in general. Still, it's around that time, so we have to at least give it a try today. Let's see what we've got. Okay. So as noted, there's some coordination that needs to be done. Lucky Vortex, huh? The big question is whether or not this is a Zero Beast or not, but it doesn't really matter for the beginning of this. First to one. I'm not sure people are normally searching all things, but first to one is still fine too. You are basically not going to necessarily be able to join in with us today for precisely that reason. We're looking for people outside of our group to have different matches with quite a lot. And sometimes that means we can't be sure who to join up with for the stream purposes, since not everyone has the same connection to everyone else. And the game doesn't even always show you all the same people. So other people in our group may not even be able to see Lucky Vortex. And I'm told that no, they cannot. But such is the way of trying to get matches in specific situations in Street Fighter V. It's good to find your own timing for these things. Oh, I see why he has 5 round first to one, huh? Not as common. But some people do like that setup quite a lot. Alright, coordination probably achieved. And that means we're going into matches. Hopefully. You may find other team members have come into your lounge, drifted about. And this is especially true if they are seeing lounges that we're not seeing. Unfortunately, I think this isn't going to kick in until a little later in. So we're back to basically not anything happening directly on stream, but we are going to be discussing today mainly specific ways of dealing with matchups you're not familiar with when you don't have a lot of time to train. Combo Breaker is usually the timing when we get to put in the most effort into training, because it's already all planned that this is where it's going to matter. Not necessarily even matter in the sense of we're going to Combo Breaker with much chance of winning specific things, but simply to get the maximum amount of experience possible. And honestly, for that you need to train. it's often true that if you don't have your punishes ready, if you don't understand your matchups, and so on, that if you go to a tournament where people are mostly going to play somewhat seriously, even if only because they want to stay on the casual station, that you'll be up against some relatively stiffer competition and people who are a little more cutthroat in how precisely they plan to take you out. But we didn't all get to go to Combo Breaker, and as a result of this, we have to do some of this testing after all of that preparation in the follow-up. This isn't entirely uncommon for us at all. Like, there's all sorts of reasons why you might go to a tournament and not actually be able to do the thing you're trying to do. Similarly, tournaments tend to lead to sickness, and then you have to recover from that. But it's much easier to get your data here for lots of reasons. Aha, the beach. Hopefully this isn't laggy, but I don't think there was any reason why it would be.
I'll show you the divide in our class.
Round one.
Have not seen that as her choice of V-trigger in really long. And there's absolutely matchups where even OmniRabbit will use that, but it's really not common. And there's definitely good reasons why it isn't common, because it relies so much on getting through positions and dodging things that most people just don't even care about. It was still, I think, a good addition to Laura's arsenal, especially since it hits on the way up like that sometimes. But it wasn't at all a new default. And honestly, for a lot of the cases of V-skills, that was true. It was just, as if someone looked at all the matchups where it was a bad idea to use the main V-skill and then gave another one where it helped. Which is pretty much how you'd expect that to be designed. But at the end of the day, a hop is still a hop. And this actually does help somewhat in the Karine matchup, because it lets you get into positions where you can stress out certain Karine players. Karine can often be a very buttonsy character. Not just to keep people at bay, but simply because her mediums and in some cases well-timed heavies are a solution to the problem outright. Oh, I don't think they were expecting that to go over. Alright, assuming they don't leap out of their own lounge, I think what we'll end up doing now is letting our Karine drop to back. And I think that will make it my turn, but it will depend on who else is in here still. Is there even character select here? I wasn't paying enough attention to whether or not it was lagging at the beginning. Well, causing the spacing. Yes, it is. Okay. Whatever stage is fine with me. As for my side, there are multiple things I definitely need to work on. Most of them, thankfully, are, I'd say, more so psychological, but I'm also really lacking some shimmy
あなたの未来に
options.
占ってあげますよ
And failing to use meter in positions where it's really important to do so. That said, part of the reason this comes up for me so often is because I get too caught up in my offense game. And because I'm often able to control the situation enough to not need to shimmy and not need to use the meter correctly,
考えたことあります
I end up not practicing it. I just get distracted from what I'm supposed to be practicing. This, however, is a matchup where I feel this is really important. Because a lot of this spacing things that end up happening with Menat for me are about getting to a very specific point and then distracting the Menat player. That was a poor decision on my end. But what does it mean to distract a player? A shimmy isn't necessarily a distraction. A shimmy is pressing on one of their own psychological responses. To distract a player, you have to have a clear idea of what it is that you actually want to do and what it is that will make them think about something else. So in this case, if I were to say that I wanted to jump, which I don't, but if I did want to jump, I would need to give my opponent some reason to think about something other than me jumping. In this case, I want to probably land that. But the only way I'm going to land that is by doing sweep. From my perspective, the more sweeps I do, the more my opponent is likely to be watching for the sweep. And when they're outside of the range of the sweep things, then I have an option. But in the end, I did basically get distracted again. I did learn some things about the way that the moves interact, which is helpful. Technically, I should know, oh, well, once she's got the orbs up, I actually don't want to use the lightning legs anymore because all forms of that move interact strangely with other moves. It's very light in terms of its hitboxes. It's easy to knock Chun-Li out of a lot of forms of EX legs and similar. But you don't necessarily want to push on not doing it. You actually would probably want to get to the point where the opponent is definitely going to block it. So my opponent, by choosing not to block it and therefore pressing a button, means that they get to interrupt their way out of it. I hope that was somehow helpful to them, because learning that is probably not terribly useful in the matchup. But EX legs is a really quick way, fortunately, to get to Menat at a specific spacing and with punish some things that might otherwise be hard to get through.
I'm summoning a storm.
Oh no, I cannot defeat your man. Oh no. For most people, I suggest that when Rashid is actually pressuring you, that you neutral jump. The reason has to do with the way Rashid's uppercut works and the level of awareness and this point that the player is often going to be thinking about. Rashid is not terribly good at hitting over his head directly, and he doesn't necessarily chase so well that you won't get away. So you can often minimize the damage he does by not sitting there and blocking. The moment there's enough space between you and Rashid that he's not likely to hit you with anything other than his stand heavy kick, you can just neutral jump. But this doesn't necessarily apply to Chun-Li, mainly because Chun-Li's jump is too floaty. if you are generally a character with a very floaty jump, the problem will be worse. I wasn't expecting that to be blocked, but the player does have to figure out some stuff based on that. That situation, for example, is not one where I would necessarily neutral jump, mainly because I wouldn't be sure that I needed to, but cornered situations, much more likely. I messed it up. I think I need to delay more on that. Not sure what they were trying to do, but it's probably fine. A situation where a shimmy would really have helped because I ended up just backing off, but my opponent did whiff the throw. I never really do not think about the fact that the opponent is going to do this though. See, there's more of those. I can be hit out of this in weird ways. I hit the wrong thing. It was a good call though, because the shield placed in the way that they placed it does help quite a lot. Alright then, let's see then. Battle Lounge host has changed. Seems like we're getting one of those shutdowns. Yep, all together out. Okay, then off I go to hunt down other team members to see where they've ended up. This may take a little while because, again, you don't always see the same things as everyone else. Which I think we're still kind of working on. But at least I can make some general notes about who's available now. And that's 2 more spaces open. But let's see what I can find. Nothing there, nothing there. Unlikely. I think this puts me a little too high for who I'm looking for. At least who I'm looking for innately. Craterhoof is still at it. Nope. The characters that I have been reported that people are in the lounges for, unfortunately, I don't see. And it might be because those lounges are full, but probably not. So I would, in this case, require actual invites. Therefore, let's dive into Godstar963. One good connection, one okay connection. In this case, I'm going to take a break from talking simply because it's one thing to be talking up people's styles and skills when they've come into your lounge, especially since, you know, people can check, and if they know anything about us, they'll be able to decide, oh, I don't want to do that. But it's much different to just waltz into other people's lounges and start making commentary on their stuff if you're not the one fighting. So, while I probably would want to talk about this given that it's a Colleen match, I'm gonna keep quiet for this at least.
Round one.
Told ya. Justice always wins.
Round two. Lucia wins. It's go time. Let's do this.
Oh, I didn't actually notice how many private slots there were in here. But if they left at least one slot open, it means they're willing to fight at least one random. So I guess I'm that random today.
Chun-Li. Luke. Let's still
Now here's another matchup where I really need a lot more experience. This is probably not so bad, but it involves staying still for really long, which I hate. And, of course, there's a lot more micro movement in neutral because Luke isn't necessarily better than Chun-Li in neutral, but there's definitely enough that you have to think about neutral as a place where she doesn't dominate just because of medium kick standing and sandblaster. So, once closer, the question is my opponent on defense or not? If they are, then you have an option, and if they're not, you don't. Your main option if your opponent is on defense is to be able to use your air legs. Yep, definitely was going to get thrown eventually. Oof, deserved. Now, unfortunately for my practice, this player is too good for that to matter. They're keeping their spaces, they're understanding their positions relative to my positions, and therefore, they're not going to get caught in that. And now I have to worry about their meter. Fortunately, Chun-Li can jump against Luke a lot more than other characters, and I'm not sure why. I think it's because he just has to be ready for more stuff, and his uppercut doesn't work quite as well. But I'm not absolutely sure about that. I just know that when I jump, I don't get punished for it, which is kind of odd. But obviously, as that's the only experience I've had so far, I have to continue to consider it a valid part of the matchup for me. Now, it could just be this person's Luke is level 36. They haven't necessarily thrown out as much Luke as possible. That was not as what I expected there. I thought move was -2 or something. Nope, I am not going to catch them with that. And I didn't have enough meter to get out of that situation either. I'm not sure if I failed the defense as a whole, or if that just messed up in some other way. Yep, there we go. That one I'm used to. When you know what the frame data on that move is and you've practiced it enough against our loop bot, your reactions turn into, this is a hit confirm, not, this is a threat. Finally got one, but I think that was just a fluke. Oof, good choice there. No rising upper, which makes sense. I pressed the wrong thing. That counts as a shimmy now, right? But no, once again, I didn't actually put enough effort into doing the right thing. I just did a bunch of stuff that works on people sometimes. So you could honestly say that I just cheesed that match. So I hope that they're willing to fight me again, and hopefully, one, I'll do that less, and hopefully, two, they'll have more responses to it now that they know, yeah, that's probably my weakness, that I will just do random stuff sometimes, and it's very counterable if that's what you're expecting to happen. I'm now confused. Didn't this say something before? Now it's all private slots. I thought it said like 1 of 6, but I thought it didn't show you if it was going to be 6. So are we going to see Luke again or Lucia? And it doesn't specifically matter. Based on what I'm trying to achieve and what we were just talking about, it's fine either way. Because I didn't beat Luke, per se. I beat Luke only in the sense that, oh, I know how to jump on this character sometimes. Lucia is harder, partially because the specific way that Chun-Li and Lucia interact in neutral is very risky for Chun-Li if I'm out of position by even a tiny bit, and Lucia gets really good pressure style setups because of the way her projectiles work. You can't dodge through as many things with Chun-Li when the projectile is in that form. And unlike Dhalsim, Lucia has the uppercut, so I'm expecting to get really pushed here. I think I could have defended that though. Yep. So I'm still not doing this correctly either. The main way to interact with Lucia in neutral for Chun, as far as I've found so far, is to use lightning legs. The reason for this is because Lucia tends to stick her face into a lot of positions that are very kickable. And Chun deals with this the other way. She just needs to advance a little bit constantly so that the problem goes away. This is actually exactly how you fight Kareen as well. But of course, your care is, am I going to be punished for doing this? If you mess up any other part, as you've just seen, the situation gets poor for you. Nope. I was expecting that to hold them longer. So I'm probably dead. But on the other hand, this scales really poorly. Still, I have more than one interaction left before I could do anything. Yeah, there we go. The better thing to do would probably have been to go for super there, but I'm still, after all this practice, not entirely sure where the super lands. And secondarily, she could just backdash, and I don't think I'd have done the reaction in time. So, let's go back to focusing on playing this match in what you could call more correctly. Holding control mid-screen. Moving forward whenever possible, and using that to stay in position. And the interesting answer is that Lucia's response should be more or less the same thing. To just V-skill kick whenever we're in a similar position for her own side. But that was me dropping something, so unfortunately, definitely not. I don't think I was specifically out of position, I just hit the wrong thing, and My opponent was absolutely ready for it in every way. Too slow. The reason that this works is functionally because Lucia has to hit so many buttons in neutral to hold control of it that she will end up sticking her buttons into kicks a lot. And the very slight forward movement is helpful. No, I like my face. Tactically, that was mostly to prevent the opponent having 2 V-triggers. I messed it up. Good job. I prefer to continue to be aggressive there because while Lucia's super is kind of avoidable, it does seem to have a very high hitbox. Meaning I wouldn't really be able to be sure that I could jump out of the way in time for any given interaction. And it doesn't really get stopped by much, so... Shall we rock again? Let's go. So from the metered side of this, your obvious situation optimally is when you feel as if you're definitely going to land some form of kick, go for the EX legs. You get the knockdown, you get the exact same thing, you can do it from slightly further away if necessary. But the problem with the EX legs is very, very difficult to understand. And it looks like we moved on anyway, so I'll just finish up what I was saying. The problem with the EX legs is that EX legs takes you forward further, faster, and that takes you into Lucia's kick, usually the crouching, instead of solving your problem. So you have to be reasonably sure that your opponent has been convinced to not hit buttons because of the regular legs before it's a good idea to do EX ones. This is one of my favorite matchups in the game when the Vega is not I'm gonna straight up call them terrible people. There are people who play a claw very annoyingly, but I'm not expecting that here. I'm expecting that. One of the hardest things in this matchup, I find, is figuring out whether or not you need to air throw in a specific situation, or dodge. The answer is usually air throw. But if you don't dodge correctly, you're gonna die anyway. Betting. Bet is correct. That was also a bet, but it was based on my opponent having, like, a specific situation they had to deal with. I have enough meter to play a specific way now that is not as common. But in order to pull it off, I need to charge correctly in every situation, which is really hard for me to do, but still got just enough meter to keep going. So I'll thank them if they manage to keep me on my toes for the charge timing. You can also use her down forward heavy kick to evade or deal with some movements that Claw has, because he spends so much time trying to get into position for certain things and will lose to it in other scenarios that you might not expect him to, because he will land oddly after missing a move. Like right there, you could get out of the way of it and still get through. If he goes off the wall from certain ranges, your better option is to use that flip because it changes her air trajectory enough that he has to care. Why did I get hit there? Hake recovery went up, right. 4 frames more. I think that was it. I'm pretty sure that was a nerf I got at some point. That's the sort of thing I spend a lot of time thinking about, but not necessarily experience in matches. So it was super important to remember that, because I'm not sure it changes this matchup a lot, but there are definitely times when I should not do certain things as a result of it. Ooh, sky high. But too far away for that to matter. That one there is the moment of dodge, even though I could technically speaking still do the air throw depending. That was a drop. Misjudged. Probably better way to put it. That doesn't benefit me as much against that character, because he doesn't fall for it as easily. It's much more likely that claw players will just hit light punch. I probably should have done back heavy kick there, but the problem with doing that with Chun is that you don't actually know whether or not back is actually back. And therefore, as the claw player, you really can do a good job in that space of making my life miserable simply by making me question which way I have to do the anti-air. That does not work for the regular version because I'll get out of the way more often. If I do the other move, I'll still be out of the way. Good catch. Right, recovery went up on that too. I think with the two combined, it's enough to change the way I have to play the matchup, because so many things with the interaction between Chun-Li and Claw have to do with how long am I going to spend in recovery in order to move out of the way of whatever you're doing. So by nerfing the crouch heavy punch and back heavy punch, I spend more time in recovery, therefore I'm more likely to get clipped in positions where I wouldn't get clipped before, and you can't necessarily keep things up that way. I want to say I learned a lot, but I feel that takes too long to say. Ah well. We'll continue with good game. I've been considering trying to learn to play Colleen more in that matchup because she can also just air throw and has much more spaces where she can get out of range faster and can deal with Claw's stuff less. And I believe she's a better counter to Sky High Claw, but I'm not expecting my opponent to pick Claw again. So I'm going to let them rotate through characters and I'll just play Chun. They definitely have made me think today though, it might be time to consider Colleen in that matchup more, because she can deal with many more things, and her main problem is that she has much more trouble catching Claw than Chun-Li does. In situations where I have to fight a Vega player who actually is like trying to win and not just run away, Colleen might be the better option. But in this case, I'm not obviously changing character midway, and I'll just be thankful that they taught me the thing. This matchup I've learned to hate, but I haven't learned to hate this matchup because I'm bad at this matchup. I'm actually quite good at this matchup. It's just extremely me doing nothing, which I don't enjoy, as you know. Oro's ability to attack Chun-Li properly is so minuscule in my experience that I just move to a particular point and then just stop playing the game almost. He barely hurts, he barely moves. I could kill him with key tokens half the time. And the main threat he poses is an overhead, but I can train that on a bot. I can just train to not be overheaded on a bot. Dropped it. Oh no, I didn't drop it, I just had no meter. See? Optimal scenario there. Although, I'm still losing. The optimal scenario there was to not do anything, because I don't register Oro as a threat. And I'm sure an Oro player will eventually show me why that is a bad way to view the matchup as a whole. But I'm pretty confident that he's not a threat in general. His moves don't combo well enough when interacting with Chun. And most of his trickery doesn't work on her at all. I'm not sure why though. To this day, I'm not sure why. See? So I'm back here and I'm like, okay. Optimally now, I've won the match, so I should do nothing. Every time I've fought Oro players that don't fight seriously, that just like try to... Like this doesn't actually annoy me. I could just stand here and block this for the rest of the match. Sometimes I go try to go over it, and usually this is just so I can learn whether or not there's a way. But the optimal thing to do, in almost every case, would be to do absolutely nothing. Fortunately, I think this player is pretty wise to that fact already and isn't going to just sit at the other end of the screen and throw those at me. Oof. I'm not sure what I was doing, but it didn't seem like a good idea, whatever it was. That said, this player seems very creative so far, so I feel like they might be able to come up with something, and I haven't had a reason to throw the Kikokens. I'm just throwing different Kikokens now, honestly. Right on target, right on time. I'm not sure if I could have gotten that. See? For some reason, nearly everything about their interactions is just, okay, you may poke me to death, maybe, but I'm not going to take that much damage if I'm on point. I'm just not on point right now. Missing that probably didn't help. Fortunately that's plus now. And I'm not sure if I failed the V reversal or just like flinched and didn't think it was going to be the super. But I don't know a direct way to test that. I know the bot can super. I guess I could give it full meter and see if it does the thing. But even this still hasn't particularly changed my mindset yet. A lot of what is happening here is I just like attacking, so I end up attacking. I view this matchup as very hard for Oro, because he has to just do the same things over and over again, kind of boringly. And the double jump just ends up, like, making things worse for him, not her. I think this is partially because the main strength Oro has as a character is that his hurt boxes go back so quickly that most people have trouble with punishes. But Chun is not that character. She doesn't have the problem. And she doesn't have the cares. Distraction was not enough. I did that too late because I would have ended up with punishing it. Well, I won't mind so much losing this to the super. I'm not really sure that I did it well enough though, because I don't think that I really challenged them toward the end, and they still had V-Trigger as an option. That could have been a death by EX bird kick, but it's still not enough. But we're still back to the same question. If I win that and that, and this interaction. What is it that will make me lose? I perceive that nothing eventually actually makes me lose. Everything Oro does to make his own life better, I just ignore. Or bait, which is worse, honestly. Oh, we went up in the air. That sucks. I'm a little worried about it because I feel like eventually I'm going to meet this terrifying, disgustingly strong Oro, and I'm going to think to myself, I should play a Chan, this will be fine, and it really won't, and that will be terrible. But for now, all I can do is keep on doing it better and better until I no longer have to think about it. I did not think that was the command grab. Part of this is definitely that he doesn't really have a good zoning jump. I have to be hit by a certain part of that in order to make it work, but there is that, of course. You can't just act as if you're not going to die at all, because the style does result in him having all of his meter to do whatever he wants with. And then, of course, you must switch to making sure you don't get hit by that, or having so much health that even if you do, it doesn't matter. But it's not enough yet, I don't think. Because a large part of the reason why this happens is because I'm not doing equally intimidating things in any way. Still don't have anything to deal with. Well, thankfully I didn't switch to Colleen, because while Colleen can manage that matchup, I like it way less. So I'm just gonna keep going. And we're back to Luke.
Let's do it. I'm always ready for a fight. So then, you really want to go through the trouble? Fine. Round one. Fight.
I think somehow I just find Luke's movement awkward or something, and I have too easy a time dodging around some of it. He's also really susceptible to what I still call the dragon roll throw, as just demonstrated, because he is a character where you jump and do the attack so deep that you can't be sure that he won't. You have to basically go for the attack as soon as you can. I should have gone for punch. I do not actually know if that works all the time, but I'm going to assume that my opponent did that the way it was supposed to be done, and I'm committing that to memory as, at that spacing, that does work. So, thank you Godstar for at least the first test I've got of that working or not working. I've had trouble with it in the past. I usually feel as if it's because I fail the super. And when I fail the super, like there are a lot of characters where they mess with me in that space. Okay. Got that one. Perfectly crossed up. Like, absolutely did not know what was about to happen there. I should have gone for the back heavy kick, but perfectly crossed up nonetheless. And I think that that combo always works from that end, so I shouldn't have done that. Perfectly crossed up again. I think I'm supposed to forward dash out of those, but I'm not actually convinced I'd make it. And I couldn't use the roll throw because I had no health left to do it with. That might have worked if it was actually instant air legs instead of whatever I just managed to do. Okay, that puts me at full meter now, but that is... My opponent will not only be watching for that, but it's so execution heavy to do the thing I would need to do with it. Like, I could have just done it right then and hoped it worked. But it wasn't necessarily a good plan. Spacing wise, messed up that part. That was a good shot. And once again, no idea. That was probably frustrating. I was ready for it, but I did not do it. Again, ready for it, did not do it. There we go. That was not a good idea, because I don't actually know how... I think that move's unsafe, but I don't actually remember. I could have just been dead. Also, there was ES upper, but I think I would have been okay with the ES upper. This person seems to prefer training stage, as many people do, so I'll make sure to choose that again if they're still continuing. I didn't need to jump in as much, but that happens over time.
Alternative. Chun-Li. Luke. Let's do it. I'm always ready for a fight. Round one. Fight.
Huh, that's the answer then. The answer from the Luke side is to use that move that you've just seen, so my opponent has found it. The reason this is the answer is because the move does not push Luke forward far enough at the beginning, and for some reason it beats my crouch medium punch. And I think that's probably because of just pure reach, which really helps. So with that option in mind now, I have to spend a lot more time thinking about what the mid-range looks like. I don't suggest that they start using those, but it might not be bad. If I were a more defensive player, it would be a great idea. But I'm too squirrely for that to be a great plan. That said, I have been in this lounge a while, and as it is private, other people in my group can't join it, which is kind of bad. Okay, so since I don't have that option, and I don't have that option, I'm now going to have to treat this more like a Bison matchup where I hit the crouch heavy punch. We're getting close to the end of stream, but lounge is maybe still available somewhere. Like, it's probable that other team members are in lounges. What exactly that means I can't tell you for sure. Like, I don't know where they are right now because I'm too busy fighting and having some fun. Sweep, huh? I like the call. Drop the air legs. And deserve that. Didn't reach. That makes sense, I believe. Because they've changed the way that move animates so that my opponent wouldn't have been caught by it anymore. Yes, I will use that one. Knowing whether to EX spinning bird kick or medium spinning bird kick, sometimes light works as well, has to do with how far away you expect to land from your opponent. Characters that don't have very quick moves or aren't willing to spend the meter on those very quick moves can't necessarily counter the spinning bird kick, because you can do it so it's safe is the wrong word, but she's too far away for you to do most of the things you'd want to do. Yep, I should have dashed there, and I was ready to dash there, but I didn't quite press it. Well, the medium kick is putting in its work, but the medium kick is unfortunately the way you lose the matchup. Because the medium kick's main purpose is to win in neutral, but the whole point is that the air legs will get over the medium kick enough to win first. And it will usually, if I'm like on point, it'll deal way more damage. I forgot there's not much recovery on that. But of course, if my opponent is not being offensive at the time, there's not as many good reasons to hit it. That was a bad bet. And that was me failing the super, which is probably good, because it probably wouldn't have mattered. So there's a nice close range interaction where I have time to do the legs, but I don't know if my opponent is on defense or offense, which is a good position for them to be in. If I can convince them that it's time to go on offense by staying still at that range more often, I don't necessarily benefit anything, because depending on Luke's status, he can actually just do free moves and get away with it. This makes it a lot more like the Guile matchup, where I just hit heavy punch, back heavy punch in neutral a ton for no particular reason. But here we've got the same thing again. My opponent playing more defensively helps a lot in their flows. And powering up enough does the rest. I need a lot of meter to deal with this. But the more defensive play counters the thing I'm normally doing. So this isn't good adaptation to what I'm doing, and it's a good note to end the stream on. I was saying Luke feels easy to me, but my opponent has just gone, nope, I'm going to defend now, and therefore it is hard. Now here's the problem from this perspective. If you are playing in this specific defensive way, I care a lot less. I will just sit on the life lead and assume that because we are interacting less, you in turn will have much less meter, so I'm less threatened as a whole. Should that have been a throw? I'm not sure. So you can see how probably a better Chun would leave this situation to their own devices a lot. I'm attacking because I always attack. But to actually do it isn't a specifically good idea, because I could just win by not doing anything. Once you've gotten to the point of being able to say I can win without doing anything, then your opponent is now put under the pressure of can they get in, can they mislead you, can they land, whatever. And that isn't a thing I get a lot of practice with because I usually continue to go in. But it looks like I'm now at the end of the stream altogether. And therefore, it turned out to be more so me fighting. But this last match does not look like it's going to be on stream for y'all. I'm probably headed off to find the rest of the team. Those of you who normally join us, you can expect to find a lounge under either Rillian or Rune Siren. Probably. And that we will give everyone together for more matches. But the lounge, this one is obviously closing, at least according to the lounge host's information. And you'll just have to guess whether or not my own adaptation wins this one. You can find all of our bots at 2-mk.org and information on whether or not we're streaming at 2_mk_FGC. This has been Rillian for Team 2MK. Good luck with your training and good night, everyone.